Welcome back, everybody. I have a wonderful opportunity to learn about a really, really talented and award-winning actress whose work I am not familiar with at all because she's on, across the pond, if you will, and she works a lot in Europe and in England and Ireland. She's done obviously some stuff in the United States, but she's one of those people who I know are great, but I haven't seen them in anything. So it's a wonderful opportunity for me and hopefully for you to discover somebody new that then you can actually go and follow and watch some of the work that they've been in. Please welcome to the show, Antonia Campbell-Hughes.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and thank you for making the time. I appreciate it. Where are you right now, kind of, around the world? Are you in England? Are you in Ireland at the moment? Where are you?
No, I'm in Northern Ireland,
Okay.
Donegal specifically. Yes.
Yes. I'll pretend like I've heard of the town that you've mentioned. I have not had a chance to go to Ireland yet. I've been to England. I've been kind of all over Europe, but I haven't gone to Ireland quite yet. I want to visit. It's one of the places that's on my list. And speaking of kind of places around the world, you grew up, and you've traveled quite a bit, and your childhood was spent around the world. So for those people who are not familiar with you, can you give us, a few minutes, just kind of your little background and how, you got into acting, but, starting when you were a child. I know you were born, I think you were born in UK, and then, right?
No, I was born in Ireland.
Ireland,
So,
okay.
no, I mean, even for people here, like who live locally, it's confusing. So when people ask where you're from, it's complicated. But
Yeah.
no, so I was born in Northern Ireland and I moved to Switzerland when I was 2. And I was raised mostly in Switzerland and Germany. I went to international school, so that's kind of like an expat type thing. But in the midst of that, I lived in Wilmington, Delaware for 3 years.
Yep.
So from age 5 till 8. So that's quite an odd kind of segue. But then I went back to Switzerland. And yeah, so there was a thing. I moved to Ireland for the first time when I was 16. And I was very adamant that I wanted to prove my Irishness because I'd gone to these quite Americanized international schools, a very strong American accent, and there's quite a lot of Americans of the wonderful American community who are very proud of their Irish heritage, but I have zero American in me. So yes, I'm intrinsically an Irish citizen and flag flyer, but my father was British, English, so I currently reside, well, at the moment, since this pandemic, I've been in the north of Ireland because I was filming here from November, and my mother lives nearby, coincidentally. Yeah, so I feel very intrinsically Northern Irish, I think, now, especially I've gotten to know the place very well over the past, like, 6 months.
Yeah. That's great. I was born in Ukraine, and I spent the first 14 years there. I came to the United States, so by the time I came to the United States, shortly after Ukraine became its own country, because before it was just a state. So when people ask me where I'm from, technically USSR, but that's a country that no longer exists. So I'm from Ukraine. When I came here, people called me Russian. Then I became Ukrainian. So I view myself as an American. I've been here, 3 times longer than I've been anywhere else. But it's one of those things that when they ask, I had to think about it for a little while before.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I mean, I suppose there's probably a very large Ukrainian. Whereabouts are you specifically?
Where am I in now? I'm in the western or northwest suburbs of Chicago.
Okay, and is there a big Ukrainian community?
I think so. I think Ukrainian community, again, there's, specifically Ukrainian. I'm sure there is a community. I'm not a huge, kind of part of any of those, expat communities. I know there is a pretty big Russian community in Chicago. Again, in terms of the kind of the Eastern European immigration, you're thinking, probably more New York, more in LA, and then Chicago would be kind of the third, cluster of that. So yeah, quite a big community. When I came here, there was a kind of a real sense that I needed to Americanize. And instead of going to ESL classes, I, for whatever reason, kind of stuck with kids who were already in regular English. So everything kind of got fast tracked for me. And I had friends, but a lot of my friends were either American or they were friends like me who came here, as kids and then kind of Americanized themselves. So I was never a part of the Russian community, so to speak.
Yeah,
But
sure.
there's quite a big number of people, not as large as Polish. Chicago has a huge
Yeah.
Polish community. I think it's second outside of Warsaw.
Really? Wow. That's fascinating.
Yep. So it's that kind of the universal feel. But this is why I grew up watching French movies.
Yeah.
When I was in Ukraine, there wasn't a lot of American movies that were shown. They just started, right before I left. I saw Back to the Future there, and then I came here and I saw Back to the Future
Yeah.
Part 2. There was a
That's so
part of the
funny.
transition, but
Sorry, I'm
French.
interrupting, but that's exactly sort of that was my narrative because
Mhm.
I was just speaking to somebody and they were asking, did I grow up with cinema, and I think I mean it's funny because like why did I have such why was I 11-year-old with such good taste, in terms of cinema? And I think it's just because the big American films weren't readily accessible. I was in Geneva in Switzerland, and so the only television or film I saw was on Canal Plus, which is they always show these wonderful films,
Mhm.
and that's really all I watched just because it was available. And
Mhm.
and then I think when I moved to Germany, I think Terminator 2 had been out a few years, but I
Okay.
saw it in the cinemas in German, delayed, and I was desperate to see it in English, and then it came a few years later in English, and I recorded the audio of it. Like that's how sparse on the ground
Yeah.
cinema was. But I think that makes, I don't know if that sort of directed my tastes. I know I was a big reader and I was very into music and art quite naturally. And so I never saw a wealth of, there's a lot of cinema that people are aware of that are maybe slightly in a more commercial arena from the 80s and 90s, and I just know none of it.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
I
uh,
same way. I just catching up on it over the years now that I'm here. But yeah, my cinema was there was Indian films, right? So
oh
Disco
yeah,
Dance.
yeah,
There was a large Indian kind of ability to watch Indian movies in Russia because they were kind of very friendly with India. So we had Indian films, we had Russian films, obviously, and then we had French cinema. So
yeah,
that's kind of what I grew up with, and I still, still to this day, I go to Netflix and I watch French cinema with subtitles. So when I speak to French actors, I know I have kind of a background in a lot of the cinematic experiences, and they're trying to figure out how that is. It's because that's how I kind of grew up.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
appreciation for it, yeah.
No, it's a great way to be.
Yeah.
Um, no, and I suppose like as well, I didn't really like in terms of how I got into acting. I
Mhm.
didn't really know that acting was a career. It's a funny thing. I mean, I got because I'd moved around so much, and I was always inclined towards the arts. Um, I found myself I was in bands and I sang in bands and that sort of thing and was wayward. And then when it came to going to university, it was it was non-negotiable that I had a very good third level education at a good university. So I went to art school, and
Mhm.
so I went to a Dublin art school called NCAD, which is National College of Art and Design, and they have like a sister partnership with Parsons. And I went to New York and I went to Parsons, and I got into fashion. But it's and then I started a fashion label quite young. I was 18. I was
Nice.
based in Paris, but there wasn't really the fun, and I showed at Fashion Week and everything, but there wasn't the capital to do like a défilé, catwalk show thing, models. And
Mhm.
so there was a lot of collaborative effort. There was that sort of Agnes B did all these sort of collaborative hubs where there was artists and musicians and all this stuff. And so for each season, there were things like we would collaborate with video format with other, do kind of conceptual film pieces. And in that time, I got the bug, and it kind of happened incidentally. And I then thought, went into fashion thinking that fashion was this three-dimensional conceptual art form, and learned quite quickly that it's actually a business and trade and commerce driven. And then when I started seeing actors or performers, I thought that was a very uninhibited, pure form of expression.
Yeah.
I then learned it's not. It's also commerce based, but yes, that's how I sort of got into it.
And that's interesting. It's the you keep on searching for purity. You keep on searching for that form of expression, and you keep on butting your head against the reality of the business. Yeah, same thing here. I had my bug, early on. I was convinced that I was going to be an actor in Ukraine. That was my path, and then we immigrated, and my parents said, "No, you're not going to be an actor. You're going to get a real job." So that took a whole, kind of roundabout way until, my middle ages, if you will, and then I had to say, "Nope, I'm going to do it to whatever extent I am able to." Now, as as a married with children, living in Chicago, which is a secondary market. So it keeps on playing, and I kept on hearing, no, this is a business. It's not about purity. And not until I got on set and really started to understand what casting was about and how people are viewed, I started to really appreciate both sides of it. So you can still find purity within your performance if you're with the right director in the right project. Oh yeah.
No, exactly. I mean, that's why I was asked something similar earlier, and I do think there's the film industry is so vast and so divided, and I really just think I think the most important thing is there are very different kinds of actors, and they should be appropriately pursuing where their fit is. And I don't mean like demographic or anything. I mean just like what your personal tastes are, I mean, I've come across through the years, I mean, I've been acting a long time, and I always heard actors say, oh, well, we're really, it's about the material, it's about the script, it's the words on the page. And I find that somewhat confusing because I know that I've been really inspired and drawn to directors where there is no script, and you go in with trust. And for me, that's always based on their references. They can tell me about the music they love. They can say they're inspired by a certain political movement or whatever, a painting. And if they're true enough about that, that's enough for me to go down the line with. And I think also the previous body of work. Anybody can turn a good script into a turkey of a film. So that's always been something for me.
I agree with you, and given your background in music, and I know that early on, going back to music, I don't know if people know that, in one of the interviews that I watched, I heard you say that you were in a punk band and you had a mohawk. So I'm trying to envision that. That's an interesting yeah. Given your musical background and given your background in fashion, I find it interesting that when you just mentioned that you want to hear from the director, what they like and what they're about, and do things get filtered through your previous expressions of what is the fashion and what is this particular character wearing, and does it speak to me, and what is the music that's associated with it, and then does that resonate? Do you use that as a way to kind of decide or to get into character?
No. But no, I mean, in terms of my actual craft, I think when I first started acting, I actually got into it because I was street cast as a 16-year-old in a film, and it was a little tiny thing, and so I had an agent from that, and that was in Dublin, and I had no interest and went off and went and did something. Yeah, I thought acting was for confident, pretty people. You know, it wasn't my thing. And but then when I did start acting, I was like, how do I do? I have no idea how to do this job that other people do. I don't have the confidence, and I don't know how to do it. How does one act? And so the only thing that I hooked onto was, well, it has to be truth. So it's that simple. So everything, there was no way in, there was no trick, there was no people, you know, I just thought learning lines, you sit down, you learn the lines. There's no simple way to do it. And then I felt that whatever role I was playing, whatever character, I feel what the character feels. And this is something I still wonder about, because I know there's other actors who, if they have to be moved by something, they draw onto personal previous experience. I don't. I'm moved by what the character I am is moved by. It's very simple. It's very truthful. And so I wear what they wear, and I listen to the music they listen to. It's very simple for me, but that's not for everyone. It's just what I do.
No, and I actually think that in a lot of ways, you know, the actors that go and study, they get a lot of information, and they get, you know, confused of so many different approaches, and you have to use this, or you have to use this, and then it takes them a while to get back, and it's kind of a circular thing, right? You start out in one place, and then you have all of this confusion, and then you come back to being you, and it's all about the truth. So I'm happy that you didn't have to kind of make that go around to come back to what it's really about, which is the truth. If the character is not believable, it doesn't matter. Everything else is just you know, waste. So, but going back to what you said of you not pulling on your experiences, we'll come back into that, because I am very happy to hear that you're not doing that. It's a very painful and something that I don't think works really well anyway, take after take after take. But in terms of you saying that you feel what the character is feeling, so, you know, some people would call that method of, you know, you're kind of living in that character for the duration of the play. Is that how you would view it, or for you it's a different way?
I think I've always been curious about method, because I always wondered, was it sort of a technique devised for people to I don't know, get away with certain behavior? I would say I'm emotionally method, rather than, you know, putting shoes and rocks in my shoes to have a funny limp. Like, that's a lot of people are physically method, and they'll do things like, to be drunk, they go and get drunk. I don't feel that that's necessary at all, you know, and that seems to be just like a gallivanting in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess emotionally method, yeah.
And do you, thank you for explaining that. And yes, you know, from the emotional perspective, do you find that, you know, because that's you versus you, that's the character, do you find that it's easy for you to snap in and out of that mode? Because some people, once they put that on and they are the character, it's hard for them to get out of that.
I think I'm better at it now. I think I really treat every single project individually as a new one. I don't think you can just have a trick, as I said, that you pull out of a hat. So I approach every single job in a different manner. Sometimes it's not necessary to be as invested. You know, I think you very much have to fit into the production you're a part of. So if I'm a supporting role, then I really respect the environment that I'm in. And that's why I think I really see myself more as a filmmaker, because I'm as fascinated by what the sparks and the gaffers are doing as I think everyone has a very equal importance level. And I'm sure you know, because that's quite a European cinema approach. So yes, I think very much your work should be conducive to the environment that you're working in.
Yeah. What I was, you know, me personally, I was always kind of afraid. I'm an empath, so I already kind of feel the energy of others, naturally. And for me to fully get into a character, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to snap out of it, or it would be difficult, and especially if I'm playing a dramatic role, of taking on those emotions, taking on those kind of experiences, and knowing where I am versus where that character is. So there was a very natural kind of, in a way, a defense mechanism for me not to go full there. Have you found that to be the case, or for you it's an easier process?
It's interesting you say that, because I've encountered actors who very much protect themselves, and I've thought about it a lot in the past 5 or 6 years, because when I started acting, I thought that was, maybe that's why I worked, I suppose. I was an open book. I was so giving, and I think that's maybe because of the world I come from, possibly. But I thought, and I do think maybe it's important and healthy for actors to hold a piece of themselves, actually, or to have such a solid, healthy life and foundation that
Right.
you can go back to safety. You can go home to a good, solid arena. You really know yourself intrinsically, and I think it's important to have a good, firm hold of your own essence
Mhm.
in order to be so open, because that's why a lot of actors get dashed on the rocks.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I absolutely. And it over the last, kind of number of years, and specifically, last 6 months, I've been doing a lot of, self-analysis, and, who I am and what I view and what is it that I want to do in this life, and how much of it is acting and some of the other passions that I have going to be a part of it. And from the acting perspective, what I've realized, and I keep coming back to, is an approach that I think will allow me to do what I need to do as an actor, but and be fully invested and grounded in it, and then know what my center is. So my approach, and I don't have a name for it yet, I'm gonna figure something out, but the
Yes.
approach is kind of an alternate reality version of, depending on who the character is, I start with myself as the center, but then I make a different choice somewhere back in time. So, if this character is somebody
Oh,
who is much stronger than me physically, and much harsher than me, then I make a tiny change in the environment, kind of have that butterfly effect going of, well, in this time in my life, I took this turn. And because of that, I went here, here, and here, and here. And then I'm still me, but I am different. Like, even just me saying that, and I just said that I'm stronger, I'm feeling different. And that allows me to know, okay, this is this tree. I am still this. I know who I am, and I can come back to it because I know what the reality is. But this allows me to feel and to react and be truthful, and I can use that, as the character. So that, I think, is becoming kind of the foundation of what I'm going to be doing with my acting, and that allows me to snap in and out because it's me, just a different version of me in a alternate timeline.
yeah. Wow, that's so fascinating.
So but again, it kind of, I think it stemmed really from a defense mechanism and a protective way, because again, I come from a spirituality background, and I come from, as a kid, I was hearing voices and it was freaking me out. And, having mediumship experiences, and having, channeling experiences and other things,
Amazing.
of not wanting to lose control and have another entity, if you will, kind of take place. So going full method, going into that character and becoming them, for me was danger zone,
Yeah, of
red
course.
area, because of that, because of not knowing. So I think that kind of forced me to find something that should work for me, while allowing me to still have that creative and emotional capacity to do what I need to do as an actor.
Yeah, yeah. That's so fascinating. I mean, it's not, I mean, it sounds very wise, because this is something that I think is so important, because
Yeah.
you know, over the past number of years that I've been writing and directing more, I have always been fascinated by people who act and direct in the same project, you know, because to me they're such a different, it's such a different energy. I think as an actor, you're completely open. You're kind of the recipient, you know. You have to be completely open and malleable. As a director, it's all here in the head, and you're thinking about this much more dominant force. And yeah, and acting seems much more bodily. But I have always been very fascinated by craft, because I look at all these fantastic actors, and craft is their thing. They've been trained, and they can do such a myriad of excellent performances, and they're chameleonic.
Yeah.
And I looked at what I was doing, and there was a lot of my characters, the roles I was playing, that were big lead performances, but they're still quite watchful and quiet and very truthful. But they're more there were characters who were observing a world around them, and things were happening too. And so I wanted to start taking on roles that were slightly more loud, if you will, you know, performed.
Yeah.
And craft seemed something very excellent, a way to progress. Like I'm quite, you know, I like a challenge, and that's why Cordelia, the film that is coming out, it seemed much more sort of craft oriented. It's more externalized.
Yeah. And then, you know, you had a hand in writing that film as well. So does that, first of all, I'm right about that, correct?
Well, it was written initially by the director, Adrian Shergold,
Mhm.
and I worked with him on a period TV series. And I met him on that, and he came to me then afterwards and said, he wrote this film. And initially it was written for Sally Hawkins, who he's very close with, and 10 years passed. And so that's why Sally is an exec on it. And I knew Sally a bit too. But because time had passed and the world changes in 10 years, he said he knew that I had always been writing and developing things with Screen Ireland. He said, would I be interested if I was to play the role and sort of infusing my own voice? Because on the page, it was written by a man, and there was that feeling of it. And also, he's very inspired by a certain, you know, his generation, 70s cinema.
Yeah.
And so that he wanted to marry what I was inspired by, what you know, I've been doing lots of European cinema. So he wanted that sort of female European cinema infusion on the page as well. So I did a pass on it. So it is very much a marriage of two generations and genders.
So thank you for that explanation. From, you know, being the actor and having part in the writing, did you find that afforded you more freedom as an actress, or did you find another voice of a writer in your head as you were kind of performing says, no, that's not quite how I, you know, meant for it to come out?
No, I mean, when we started the first day on set,
Mhm.
it was very, very evident. My role at that point was actress,
Good.
actor. I mean, it was very clear. Like everything else was left behind, and that was the only way to proceed.
Yeah. So then going back to what you're saying of, you know, doing more projects and being an actor and a director on the same project,
Mm.
have you had a chance to do that yet? I know you're doing more of your own work now. Have you been in those spots where you have to do both?
No, I've never. Writing is different because it's like writing seems past tense, but
Yeah.
directing is very active.
Mhm.
I start my first feature in 3 weeks. I do have a role in it. Yeah, it's been strange times, challenging times to say the least.
Yeah.
I do have a small role in it, which I battled with, yeah, initially because I didn't want to be in it, but it's very small, contained. She's only in 3 scenes. They're quite specific in tone. They're very much like little deliveries. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a very intelligent choice because you're kind of doing both and having a large part, you know, could prove to be very difficult. as an actor, I know myself that, whatever choices that I'm making, I don't know what it comes across on the screen, and I need the help of the director who sees what's actually going on, sees whether it's truthful or not, or how it resonates. I remember doing one role which was incredibly freeing, and I loved every moment of it because it allowed me to be completely different for myself. It was a comedic thing, and I was playing somebody who's a drug addict, sex addict, motivational speaker, and an ED spokesperson, like all, concoction of all these things that I just said, okay, that's great. That's not me at all. So I can just go big. I can go big. I can have fun. It was awesome. But what I saw is that I thought I was going huge. I thought I was, in a way, filling the room with my energy, and it was a pretty large room. But when I saw it on tape, I thought I was 4 times bigger than I am normally. I needed to be 8 times bigger for it to really translate just visually. So what I felt as an actor and what the director sees through the lens are different things. So if you have the big role, regardless of how nuanced that role is, and you are the director, that could be very difficult. I'm glad you made the choice of having a small role while being the director.
Yeah, indeed. No, because it's been so chaotic, and now from this point onwards, it's incredibly busy. I keep forgetting that I also have to do that. I kept, yeah, I kept going, should I just cast someone else so I can take the weight off my shoulders? But
What I found with some actors like Ozark, that's doing really well here, is his name escapes me at the moment. I don't know why, but
Bateman, isn't it?
huh?
Bateman?
Yes, yeah, Jason Bateman. So from what I understand, because obviously as a part of it, he didn't direct every episode. He directed
Yeah.
a few episodes in the beginning. He directed a few episodes at the end. So he was kind of able to do both, but to separate things in a way where he was more of an actor in most of it as opposed to being the director.
No, I mean, he seems extraordinarily talented human
Yeah.
being. I mean, his writing is extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah, but from his perspective, I think his craft, he always liked being the character who's the observer, who is the the audience kind of member in the room. So that's been his approach. So maybe that approach also lends well to being the director who is observing what's happening. So maybe that's an easier meld rather than having a director and then a completely different kind of character that you're acting.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, at one point I thought maybe I'm like, how do I separate? So that maybe I should wear a wig so that it's like it's so isolated, but there's no time to worry about things like that. I was trying to think about how to really differentiate the energy. And
That's interesting. And then how do you, again, once you act, right, once you're in that scene, how do you know if you need another take? And do you need somebody that really is kind of a co-director that's directing you while you're in actress mode? Can help you with that. I don't know if you've set that up yet.
well, I mean, normally you just watch playback, wouldn't you? Like, I don't really like to watch playback. I find I've worked with actors who always look at the monitor afterwards, and I find that bizarre. Like, it's sometimes I think for blocking, if you need to cheat a movement or something, then it makes sense. But the vanity aspect I find quite unusual. But
I'm with you, and I find it more confusing because then I'm focused instead of on my performance, I'm focused on my nose looks way too big in this particular shot, and it's not something that I enjoy. So I'd rather try to do it, and if it feels right, I'm good, and whatever it looks like is different.
No, I mean, even this is painful.
Yeah, I
We have to
certainly.
look at ourselves. It's dreadful. This world of Zoom. Oh my God, I know this isn't Zoom, but
Well, this is worse because this is high HD as opposed to Zoom, which is 720.
right. Super. Yeah, no, it's funny. In lockdown, I don't know if you use the same words in America, but I did a Zoom TV show, like show thing.
Mhm.
And I think we filmed in April and May, and it's with some so it was like Brian Cox, you know, this actor, and like Clay Spang and some wonderful actors. And we had to use a program similar to this so they could record it on quite high quality.
Mhm.
But everything was done via Zoom. So costume fittings were via Zoom with the whole team and producers.
Yeah.
And but the difficulty was, it is as though each actor is performing it's like a therapy session type thing. There's like a multiple therapy session, and some people do therapy sessions online, and so it was like that. But as an actor, you had to deliver to camera and also see your own image the whole time, which was hell on earth. I mean, it was very draining, actually, I found, and everyone had the same experience. All the actors, it's actually quite exhausting.
I understand perfectly. A lot of the recordings right now and a lot of the casting calls right now are done via this mechanism. So looking straight to camera, because some casting directors want you to look straight to camera, some want a little off, and you're still doing kind of the crafty things you need to do. But the inability for me, as I get used to it as an interviewer now, doing this for close to 4 months, but there is a part of me that still hates this process because I want to look into your eyes. I want to, to see exactly what's happening as opposed to having you in the periphery. And same thing, it's happening with the Zoom, casting calls. I can't look into the eyes of somebody because if I am, then my eyes are not going to be seen by the casting director. It's a really awkward thing. And I'm hopeful. Obviously, this is the last thing that people are worried about in this pandemic. But I want to get back to having in-person kind of auditions where you can actually be with the reader and be in that energy. That's really what I'm looking for.
Yeah, no, precisely. I mean, when I was doing the Zoom show, there was all kinds of things about notes of where to position our eye lines, and we were just learning. I mean, I heard about Zoom when I was asked to do this TV show. I was like, what is Zoom? And now it's all we talk about. But it was because in some of the scenes to be they wanted it to seem like a Zoom format, so there were like the boxes pop up in the meeting mode or whatever, and there was about 6 of us, and then about 14 producers that were all silent. But we all kept asking where we should be directing eye lines, because if you have 6 people on the Zoom call, which it wasn't the show, they're talking to each other, but you kind of have to know who each person's talking to. So we're endlessly having, excuse me, to cheat eye lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and
Yeah.
technically it's very difficult.
And again, it kind of takes you out of the moment, right? Because instead of focusing on being, in the character and the scene, you're focusing on the, the function aspects of it. And, where is my eye line? Where kind of you have that split part of the brain that's always observing, and if I'm doing the right thing, which takes you out of what you should be doing yourself. Yeah,
but I suppose I mean, I thought like so many of us or of them or of actors
right.
act to tennis balls and green marks and all that kind of thing these days. So what difference?
That's true. That's true.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, and it's interesting. The conversation that I had yesterday with a wonderful actor from Breaking Bad, if you're familiar, Charles Baker. And Charles was saying that one of the things that helped a lot of other actors with CGI work is mime work and studying as a mime, and he did that. And because that's the ability to kind of just be present and bring emotion out of your body with nothing around and kind of create the world around you. So he was saying that a lot of the European, British actors who have the ability to kind of study that and to bring that, now they have in essence a leg up on the American actors, where miming is not something that's being taught or has been taught for a long time.
Really? Wow. Yeah, no, I've heard of actors who've done mime classes. No, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And for physical performance, I suppose, as well.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I haven't had a chance. I think I only did one thing that had kind of CGI, and I had one instance where the camera is right here, and you're talking to the camera. It's an extreme close-up, and you're supposed to see the other person in there. There is no other person in there. You're just talking to the camera, so you're creating that environment. So all of those things are draining, and I think what people don't realize is just how emotionally, psychologically, and physically draining acting is. And it's not just the long hours on set, it's the acting itself that's so draining.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, at times, like it's funny because in a sense, it's such a luxury, I mean, actors are pampered very much so. But yes, no, I find it, I find the it 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 requires a certain personality type, a certain energy type. Like some people, I think probably a lot of actors are introverts, and therefore it is draining for them. And some people who are naturally extroverts, it's not in any way draining whatsoever. Human proximity can be draining, but to be observed is draining. But those are often the most interesting actors.
Yeah. I see, especially if they let you into that world. I agree, absolutely. Um, So I know that you started out kind of, initially in British comedy, and you were comedic, but you wanted to do more drama. Now, not to compare, experiences at all, but I get cast mostly as dramatic, and I want to do more comedic because
Really, how interesting.
I like drama. It just, comedy is more me. I'm a funny, goofy kind of guy. I see myself more on that kind of, not the sitcom as the goofy uncle. That's me. And I get asked to play these heavy roles. So not that I don't enjoy them, but there's a balance. So
Yeah, yeah.
I see you in, and obviously you've been awarded for a lot of the dramatic work that you do. Having done comedy, do you ever feel like you want to come back and do a little bit more comedy to add to it?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Simple. Yes, simple. Because it just by coincidence, I mean, it's just circumstance that the first job I got was a comedy series. So I've been living in Dublin. I decided I want to leave fashion altogether, and I had to really very much start over. Like I went to London, I think age 22, and I knew nothing about the world. And I had an agent from a headshot, like a casting director had thought I was quite interesting, and she asked me, did I have a headshot? And I said, what is a headshot?
Yeah.
Like that green. I knew nothing about the world. I was too busy screaming in punk bands. So, and so I provided her with a photograph, and she sent it to some casting directors in London, and they were interested in me, I suppose, because I was different. I had very short black hair and whatever. And the actresses at that time, they all there was a sort of uniformity, I suppose. And it was a time when street casting was becoming more, there was more of an opening to that. So, but the first audition I think I got, and it was this comedy series, and I couldn't do an English accent. I sounded quite American, and so I had to do an accent test. And then, and I'd never seen any British comedy. I had no background of it. I didn't know, I was not interested that much in comedy, but I guess that's kind of fit. It was very deadpan. They said it was like the British version of Curb Your Enthusiasm. So it's that kind of like flat
Yeah.
delivery. And I was playing like a sulky teenager. So there you go. But at the time, I felt very unchallenged. I thought it was like, I found it very family oriented. The audience was quite wide and families liked it. So I wanted to do things that, I could stretch my limbs and exercise my demons and go to the dark furrows of my brain. But comedy is a really wonderful world. It's very loyal. It's very exciting. It's very collaborative. And that's when I started writing, because I kept being offered comedy jobs then, and I worked with wonderful people. I did a show with Jennifer Saunders. I worked with really great people, and I saw careers that I would love to have, where people kept collaborating with the same people over and over through their lives, where careers went on until their 80s. People wore many creative hats. They'd be writers, directors, actors, everything, and that was very interesting to me. But I really did want to make the films that I grew up enjoying. And so in order to do that, I had to stop doing comedy altogether. That it was not very welcome to do both. So it became such that I suppose maybe it's just that I was only seen for comedy projects. And so I stopped altogether, and then I started doing kind of weird little independent film. But yeah, now, I mean, I'm writing a comedy thing at the moment with my writing partner, who's a comedic actress.
Yeah.
So.
That's great. I think it's important to have that balance, right? You can have, it's like having too much rain. You know, rain can be pretty and wonderful, but at some point you want some sunshine. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned accents. It's interesting that, and you know, Michael Caine in one of his books, he talks about accents, and he said if you have a chance of working where you don't have to do an accent, don't, because doing an accent takes you know 25-30% of your brain during the
Yeah.
performance, and it makes your performance worse just because you have to focus on doing it. I found that to be true personally. I love doing accents. You know, in life in general, I've always done accents, and I love it as a normal part of who I am. But when I had to do roles, there is a part of me that's specific. Oh, you just mispronounced that word. That's not how it's supposed to be done, and it takes away. Have you found that to be true, or what has been your experience?
I've rarely used my own accent.
Okay.
I don't think when I have. Maybe once or twice, but rarely do, and I don't like to, because I find with my accent, because my first accent as a child was very British, then it became very American, and then in my late teens, I really wanted to have an Irish accent, so I worked very hard to adopt it.
Yep.
And now I have this sort of changing thing,
Yep.
but it's inconsistent. So when my own accent is used, like every single time a director says to me, "Oh, use your own accent, so interesting," like you don't want to do that because it doesn't cut. So I will, you know, if the top and tails of scenes, if they interlink in direct continuity, my accent will sound more British in the, you know, the top of the scene, and then become more American later. It just sort of meanders. So I much prefer, and also for me, maybe that is the one area where I am a little conventionally method, is that I like to have an accent, a voice for my characters. I think it changes you a lot. For me, it does anyway. I know that yeah, I feel very different in different accents.
That part I agree with completely. For me, it's the way that the person speaks, you know, the accent or any, you know, dialect of the person influences who they are, you know, what they're wearing, what they feel like, what the energy of the person kind of feels like. All of these things for me, you know, I love when I'm reading something, you know, I immediately kind of, that person feels like they're a Southerner, or that person feels like they're from Boston, or that person feels like a New Yorker. You know, it's that thing, and then I have to usually, you know, put that away because the director doesn't have that same idea. But you know, that's the way that I interpret when I'm reading anything.
Yeah, yeah. When you were saying earlier about Michael Caine, I mean, I was about to say heard that, but actually, I'm in such awe and very admiring of actors who perform in different languages, and that's something that I've always wanted to do. So I was on a French film once, speaking English, alas, but I was very pushing to speak French. But it was it was a film. I mean, John C. Reilly was in it, speaking English, obviously, and then there was mainly French cast and some Pakistani actors and Indian actors speaking Pakistani. So it's very much a multicultural, multilingual film by a wonderful director called Tom Abedigan, who writes with Jacques Audiard all the time. So that he wrote Rust and Bone and these wonderful films. But anyway, I digress. Someone from, I think the makeup artist was talking to me about Matthias Schoenaerts, and he acts in many different languages. And she said exactly what you just said about accents, but she said his excellence as an actor diminishes by a percentage with each language he speaks. So I think his first language is Flemish, isn't it? I think he's Flemish, so he's the most he's at his highest excellence as an actor in his mother tongue, which I believe to be Flemish. And then when he speaks French, it's like slightly down one grade, it's like a filter. And then in English, it's down a further grade. But of course, we would know him mostly for his English performance, English language performance, and he blows everyone else out of the park. So
yeah, everything is relative, of course. Well, Russian is the native language, so I've done some roles in Russian.
Amazing.
And I think because again, I've been living here for so long, English is really the primary language. And when I left, the wealth of the Russian language was as a 14-year-old, somebody who was, fairly well read and educated, but it was at that level. So now, there is the part of me that tries to figure out whether, again, the accent that I'm doing as a, well, okay, there are two different things, right? So when you're speaking purely in Russian, sometimes my American accent comes through, and I have to be very, very particular about that. And then, the types of words and making sure that I don't mispronounce anything. So that there is a part of my brain that's involved there. And anytime that I'm doing English speaking roles where I have to be a Russian speaking person, so you have the Russian accent, then everybody has their own opinions of what a Russian accent sounds like. And you just have to kind of pick one, and hopefully the director agrees with where you're going and go there. So there's always that thing in the back of my mind that doesn't allow me to just let go and relax. So what I found that works, the only thing that kind of works, is that if I'm going to be doing anything that's specifically in Russian, then I try to kind of just snap in and speak mostly Russian and listen to Russian, radio, watch Russian films, and get that kind of get that saturated through my body. So that's what I found that works well, and then I get out of that when I'm done.
God, I mean, don't you find these complexities actually? I mean, it's so enjoyable. You can find all these details and nuance. Yeah. I did a film once playing an Austrian girl who is a real person, and when I initially screen tested, I screen tested in German, in the German language, and I was cast to do the film in German, which was it was going to be incredibly daunting and such an undertaking because I'm not fluent in German. As a child, I spoke German in Germany, but it was by no means my first language, and so it's going to be such an undertaking because how do you get that instinctive nuance to performing? And then they decided and also I was being trained to have an Austrian accent, so it's not just, so there's so much influx infusion of that. And then they changed last minute to doing the film in English. But yeah, I mean, I find I really enjoy accents always.
Same. Even the casting directors, I've had a lot of casting directors on the show, and I asked them about doing things in accents, and they said casting directors usually don't agree on anything. But I think from what I've gathered that they have some agreement on in terms of accents is that if you're doing an accent, it better be perfect, because if it's not perfect, they're going to focus on that and they're going to not focus on your performance. So that's what I've learned from them in terms of just doing casting, because I inevitably want to do something with an accent when I'm reading for a part. So it's Some are completely against it. Some actually, what I found interesting is that, if you're walking in as the character, which is, a whole debatable aspect of what you need to, whether you should be doing that or not. But if you're working in as the character and the character has an accent, you have to do that. And then if it's proper, then they'll be surprised that this is not your native, and they'll be even more impressed when you, after the audition, switch into your, regular way of speaking.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're coming in, and let's say you have to do a British accent, if you're coming in as the American, and then you, for the audition, switch into British, it's going to be a lot harder for them to make that translation that your British actually is real. So like if you're doing accents, you probably should start with the accent and then snap out of it, as opposed to come in and then get into it. So I'm just
Yeah.
various things.
That's an interesting one about going in character.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan, personally.
Neither am I. Because what, again, the impression that you're making, right, is if I'm reading for these dramatic parts, people want to hire you because they know that you're going to be a good person on set and somebody that they actually will enjoy spending time with, and you're not going to be a psycho, a moron. And if I'm playing somebody with a very dark past, if I'm playing somebody who's about to murder somebody, and I walk in with that energy, that's the energy that I'm portraying. And you can snap out of that, and you can be you and smile after it, but that's what they're going to remember. So they may love your performance, but there's there's going to be a part of that that says, is that, is this is what he really like? Which part of him is the reality? And I'm always worried about doing that and walking in as that person, if that person happens to be somebody who's much, much darker and more evil than I am.
Completely. And I also think it means that you can't really take direction because you've got a preset idea of what your interpretation of the character is. Sorry, I just said the same thing twice, but it means that you're not open and malleable to receive it, because if you go in character, then you have decided what this person is, and so then you have to undo it. So I quite like less solid preparation, because like at the moment I have actors who are preparing for my film, and it's all interesting, to look at it from the other side.
Yep.
And I don't really want much rehearsal time, and I don't want them to be too pre-prepared and set in their decisions of how they're going to do things, because I think it will all happen on set.
It would be much better to happen on set. With and I don't know how it is again, kind of in Europe, and how the casting is done there. Here, it also depends on where you are physically. So from what I understand, in LA, they want you to come in as a character. When you're coming into a room in New York, you should come in as yourself, and then snap into the character. So it really kind of depends regionally of where you are. In Chicago, I think it's more of come in as yourself, unless again you're doing this. So right, it's the type of roles that you're reading for. If you're reading for a co-star, and you're a cop, and you have a few lines of telling somebody that that's where they went, they want you to come in really as the person they're going to see right away, because there is this notion that a lot of the casting, because they're so busy, they start to get more mechanical and lack imagination. So they want to see you as that person, and okay, good, yeah, I buy him as a cop, move on. As opposed to, hey, you're a good guy, and, oh no, okay, you're somebody else. Too many things for them to process, and sometimes you don't get it. So you just play the profession for these smaller roles and get out. So there's so much of that going on where actors are driving themselves crazy, and sometimes it's better to just go in, make a choice, have fun, go, and that's hopefully it.
Gosh, goodness me. I mean, I can understand how that's practical, but it doesn't. It's not exactly the world I want to live in, I suppose. But it's a business. I mean, that's the difference when we're talking about, it's such a vast world, the entertainment industry. There's so many different pockets of it. It's about finding the one that's suitable for you. Yeah, I mean, I've never really done that sort of conveyor belt casting for filler roles in big TV series. There's nothing wrong with it, and I actually wouldn't mind it, but I've just never really experienced it.
Yeah. So what's next for you? I know you're starting to do more of your own stuff. Is this where you want? I know you've mentioned comedy. So, what's next steps for Antonia?
Well, so I'm very much focused on getting this film done.
Good.
It's quite a huge thing. It's been 3 years in development and process.
Okay.
I have a lot of films coming out actually. So
Yeah.
Cordelia is coming out, obviously. I shot a film in December, January in Belfast called Black Medicine, which is it's got a big I'm the lead in it, and it was pitched to me initially when I was asked to do the role as you were never really here as a female shot in Belfast, which so I immediately said yes, because
Yeah.
that works for me completely. Lynn Ramsey I'm a huge fan of, and but that was really enjoyable because it's quite a it was a new type of character that I haven't played. It was older, more mature. She's an anesthetist, in a surgical anesthetist, but so there's like a black market underworld where people are doing kind of backstreet surgeries and selling organs, and so we still have more pickups to do on that after lockdown. So that is coming out. A couple of other things. There's the Zoom show is being pitched to go to series, so that is, well, I'm not allowed to say actually, so I won't make the mistake of saying it. Yeah, I'm pretty busy.
Sounds like it, and hopefully, I don't know, how are things in terms of in Europe of filming? Has it started again? Is it
Yeah.
picking up?
There's
Okay.
quite a lot shooting as far as I know. It's very cautious.
Yeah.
Things were announced at different times, so there was the government allowed people to shoot. First of all, things were opened up, but then the constraints are so enormous. It was about how to actually make it functional. So on my production, it's contained. It's in a very remote area. So I'm filming in Ireland in a very kind of isolated, remote place. It'll be like a pod environment, so no one leaves. Crew and cast who are coming in from England have to quarantine 2 weeks and be tested. But I think it's harder for the bigger productions. Like there's a huge film called The Northman in Belfast, which is like it's Robert Eggers, and that's gone back into production, and that's very monitored and controlled, and everyone's quarantining and isolating and all this stuff. Yeah, I just think every production is somewhat different, and it's difficult. Yeah,
Yep.
we'll see, and hopefully there won't be any massive outbreaks that shut the industry down again.
I hope not, because it's just starting to come back a little bit. New York has started shooting, LA has started shooting, very, smaller kind of cautious things. I know Canada started shooting. Here in Chicago, I think we're about to start. So keep your
Yeah,
fingers.
the only massive change is travel. I mean, so what was so great about the UK was that these kind of European co-productions were becoming the norm. So there were so many, like I know in Ireland specifically, there's Ireland has a Belgian Luxembourg co-production, which is very common. I mean, all that will be less or non-existent, I suppose. So you can bring in European actors into London, but only your leads, your core cast. So all of that sort of European sensibility, I think, will go for the foreseeable. But as long as we're
Hopefully
working.
not for a long time. So we'll keep our fingers crossed there. Last question for you. If you had a chance, from your vantage point right now, if you had a chance to go kind of back in time and give one piece of advice to you who just got the British sitcom, and give one piece of acting advice, what would that be?
Probably what we were discussing earlier, which was don't give 100%. No, but I mean, it is, but it's like retain your core self.
Mhm.
You know, I think it's especially, I think it's interesting, but what you said about having that ability to stop, put it aside, and at the end of each day.
Yeah.
It's difficult to, yeah, to keep a percentage of yourself for yourself.
Yeah, it's, I think all of us are working on that. So we'll see if my new method works, and if it does,
Yeah.
then I'll be telling people about it. Hopefully, it'll work for them as well.
Right.
Thank you, Antonia. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. I really appreciate you jumping on and sharing your experiences. I know they're valuable to me. I'm hoping that they're valuable to our audience as well.
Likewise, thank you.
It's my pleasure. And thanks to everybody for tuning in into another episode of The Love of Acting. We know you love it as much as we do, and that's why we do this for you. Thank you.